Hello, hello, good evening, welcome. All right, well, I'm very excited. I've planned a lot
There we go.
today. Yeah, that's the one. I've planned a lot to cover today. Maybe it's very ambitious, all the things I want to cover. So I'm going to jump into this. I know you're working on your one sheet, and that's very important. And I will try to address as many things as possible. Um, for the purpose of being useful again for your one sheet. I apologize in advance because there will be a lot of things that I will be repeating. You had me as a professor in the previous class, and there's a significant overlap in what you're trying to do with your one sheet, and then the next go to market, and every one of those presentations will be very much connected to marketing. But marketing is not the only thing that you need to know in order to be an entrepreneur, but it's definitely a very important element. So, jumping back to this lecture two, I have a few quotes that I want to bring up because I think it's important. Because again, this is your last class, the last chance you'll be working with your group members, the last time that you will be so close to one another. I know it may be something you're looking forward to be done, but the reality is you always have to work with people in order to go far away. And it's this quote from Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is a small country in Africa that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And in fact, this quote was given to me by a student maybe 6 years ago from MIA. There was a student from Africa, and he was telling me this. He was from that country, and said that this was a very important proverb. And I actually liked it very much because I think it's important to think in terms of being stronger as a group. In fact, if you play chess, you're much more powerful as a group against the computer than alone against the computer. But I have a few more quotes, and there's two from Peter Drucker, and this is important. It's an individual, a professor, a consultant that is one of the most famous for the past 50 years. He passed away, but he was very famous because he was the true voice of the master students in the business school, where he was talking about things such as authenticity is a child of 1,000 rehearsals. So the idea of authenticity doesn't really exist. The authenticity is making things look easy and natural. And as a business, to be successful, sometimes that's what it's about, is to make it look like it's easy, that you're not really having a big effort in order to make things to work. But the reality is there's a lot of work behind this. But then the most famous quote from Peter Drucker, and probably the most famous quote when you're doing a master in business, is the one that's called culture eats strategy for breakfast. Has anyone heard that quote before? No. So I'm glad to be the last professor to be able to bring the most famous quote when usually you're doing a master degree. And it's a quote that comes from a management professor. So I'm a marketing professor, but we do a lot of things that have to do with strategies, and they management do too. So Peter Drucker's the Michael Jackson, the Beatles, if you want, of the business and business management. And it says culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what it is this is when you go to a business school, you learn all kinds of things. And you get buy a textbook, and it's an expensive, thick textbook with 600 pages, and you're supposed to learn all of this, go through the quiz and so forth. But the only thing that he says that is the most important and that really works is that culture is number one. So you can you can teach people to do things, you can force people to do things, but the best way for people to do things is because they're doing it naturally, because they like doing it, and it's not something they don't want to do. I remember my daughter when she was maybe 5 or 6 years old. I took her to dance in ballet classes because I thought, hey, as a European, if you're a little girl, you take her to ballet. All the girls like to go to ballet. Well, not really. She pretended she was sick every time that she had to go there. Oh, my stomach, my knee, my leg, my this, my head. Oh, I'm sick. She didn't want to go there. And then I was like, my God, she doesn't want to do very much. But then I realized that if I did this for gymnastics, she was ready 30 minutes before going. She loved gymnastics. So 30 minutes before going, she was ready for gymnastics. 30 minutes before going to ballet, she was sick and pretending she was dying. So that's the idea of culture, is if you teach the culture of good business, people will do it naturally. And then that's the best strategy. Versus if you teach people all the different methods, the reality is people remember them for the quiz, but they don't remember them to execute them. So that is something very important. And one of these culture I try to infuse in this class is the culture of searching and believing in opportunities. The foundation of business, I believe, is those opportunities, not the ideas. If you find opportunities, you will have something that is more objective and less subjective. And in business, everything is very subjective in many ways. And so you try to make things more quantitative and objective as much as possible to minimize the risk, but you don't procrastinate because sometimes you have to do things without being sure. But when we talk about business, to succeed in business, what do you think you need the most? So this is a question for all of you, and we've done this kind of questions in the past. But number one, you need time. Number two, you need money. And number three, you need a business plan. Number four, you need skills. Number five, you need networks. Number six, you need to have experience. Number seven, you need training. What do you need the most in order to be successful in business? Really, 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 when you boil it down to, you force it down to one thing. What do you think makes business most likely to succeed? If there was only one that you take. Yes, Justin.
I'd probably say a business plan,
Why would you say a business plan?
just because I think a lot of the other options can kind of be explained within a business plan, and by having a plan set in motion, you can kind of, allot the time and money that you need to for whatever you need to do. You can plan out the rest of what is necessary.
That is true. So that's a very important answer, and I won't comment on what you just said in just a few minutes because I want to hear a few other comments from different students. Thank you, Justin, for jumping in. So Justin think it's a business plan. What other opinion do we have? Do you all agree? Maybe that's why. Yes, Morgan.
Not to discount a business plan, but I think that you can get away with a lot of things as a business if you have a network to support you, if you have a community, a set audience for your product, a set fallback plan of investors. If you have people, if you have a network that cares about your business, it can really speed up a lot of processes. It can make money flow easier. You can outsource certain issues that you're having to those who are otherwise skilled that you don't have. You can certainly sort of BS your way through a lot of formal training or experience with like if you have people on your side who believe in your vision. So not saying business plan is a bad idea. It's a very good idea, but I think network is something to continuously cultivate.
Wow, Morgan is on fire tonight. That answer is
I care
perfect.
about this a lot.
But your answer is absolutely perfect. It's true. If you look at this, you think, well, if you have a business plan, you maximize. So it's what I was just saying a few minutes ago, because you're trying to minimize risk by planning things and having an understanding of who's your target and what are your opportunities. So you try to objectivize everything and optimize the chances that you are accounting for things and preparing yourself. And that's very, very important. And that could be the best or one of the best answer. But the reality is when you see number five in there, networks, and you boil it down to the really, really most important thing, Morgan just said it extremely well, is if you have networks, I mean, you can things are gonna happen. I mean, just look at Shark Tank. Why do people go to Shark Tank? They don't go to Shark Tank to get the $100,000 from the shark or the $200,000 from the shark. They go there so they can get the network of the shark because the shark, what they do is they make a phone call. They play golf and tell their friends who owns Walmart, hey, can you take some of my products? And this right away, they're going to take $6 million of products. Trying to sell $6 million by yourself, you can have the best business plan. Unfortunately, that's not enough. And a network, unfortunately, is very, very important. So I'm a business professor. I teach in the business school. It's one of the largest in California, almost 10,000 students. I have 200 students in the room. And I said, how many businesses do you know? Do you have a relationship with? And you will be surprised, half of the class has zero business relationship. right? So it's like you talk to someone that play baseball and you say, hey, do you know someone that plays baseball? Well, yeah, I play baseball. You can't really play baseball by yourself. So I know someone else. Say the same thing to someone that plays football. Say the same thing to someone that plays basketball. They all know someone. So now say this to a business student, and you'll be surprised if they know three businesses. That's not the average. An average business student should know 25 businesses. And if you know 25 businesses, means that you've been working on your networks. So the students, when you ask them this question, obviously you're master students, but the undergraduates is they will jump into the money. Oh, you need money to have a business. That's the most important thing. Or they'll say, oh, you need time and, maybe experience all this. They will never say networks because they don't realize that at the end of the day, that's really what makes things work. Obviously, if you have money, that's also very, very helpful. But you could have money and not have any motivation in life or not be sure what to do and not have much ambition and so forth. So the money is not what's going to make everything works. What makes things works is that you know someone that knows someone and they know you and you're going to connect with them and you eventually that's how the business is going to run. So this is very, very important to succeed in business. If you're a music entrepreneur, make sure that you build your network and that's your investment. Every day you build this network. So music entrepreneurship is a discipline that intersect the traditional music disciplines. Music entrepreneurship harnesses the skills and mindset of the entrepreneur to empower musicians to create work that is meaningful, sustainable, and oriented to the community and the market that need those services and those products and everything else. So it's very important to know your market, but there are so many things you need to know. There are 9 ways to embrace being an entrepreneur as an artist. Think of yourself as a business from the start. So this is a business. This is not a hobby. Build up your contact list. That's what we're just talking about, the network. Make your own opportunities. That's the thing, is you have to create sometimes the opportunity. Put yourself in the point of intersection with the opportunities. Have your price list on hand. How much is it worth what you're going to do? What are you going to do? And how much is it worth? Oftentimes people don't think much about pricing. Create systems for your career. So you're building your careers. So you have like different plans, you have different strategies, you have different tactics. Generate a buzz around your artwork. So make sure that you tell people that you write about it, that you share the writings to other people, create some presentation, get a handle on your finances sooner than later. So that's the other thing is you don't want to discover that you don't have money when you don't have money. You want to anticipate, and that way you can be prepared. Get creative and create work in collections. So you don't have just one work. Think about a theme, several themes. That way you can license through the themes and get people to want to buy the whole collections. Or some collection they like, some collection they don't like. Maybe they don't like everything in the collection, but there will be something that they like. Not everyone likes the same thing, and not people that sell something is liked by everyone. So this collection is going to help you to be somewhat liked by different people. So you have different collections, different models, and so forth. Be clear about your goals. So set goals and stick to it. So why people are entrepreneurs? Because sometimes they just say, hey, I need to make some more money. Sometimes they want to be able to have a lifestyle of an entrepreneur where they can manage their time, or they're simply an entrepreneurial firm. So I talked about this last time, which is more important than being a startup, always creating businesses. There are some people who have a personality. They are much better at creating businesses than running businesses. And that is very true. So managers are very good at running them. Sometimes managers are not very good at creating them. So it's just different skills, creating businesses than running businesses. So the process is, do you want to be an entrepreneur? Yes or no. If you want to be an entrepreneur, develop some business ideas. So when you develop some business ideas, you're not in love with the ideas. You just come up with lots of ideas. And then you move from this concept of idea to the concept of having a firm that is innovative, entrepreneurial for someone's problem. So you do some research and find the arguments and build your business plan at that time. And then you manage and grow that firm. So looking at it from the steps is you have those various steps with the different actions that you have to have within each one of the steps, where you do some different studies in order to optimize the chances that you will be successful. When you do this, obviously you want to look at your resources. And again, one of the important resources is having a network. Should entrepreneurs focus on developing their business ideas? Well, yes, because so the answer to this one is it depends. What do you mean by business ideas? What is success, and success could be monetary, success could be growth, success could be how much you sell it once the business exists, success maybe being the first at doing something. So ideas are too esoteric. So you have to be very careful that when you come up with ideas, these ideas can be supported. Investors don't like to invest on ideas. It's difficult to evaluate ideas. Ideas tends to be lacking nuances and being vague. Too often they are looking at products, being in love with the products and not so much being in love with the problems. Entrepreneur, if they focus too much on the ideas, they won't think about the customers. They're going to think about themselves. That's my idea. I'm in love with my idea. So entrepreneurs need to focus on opportunities. Entrepreneurs can be creative in thinking about all kinds of ideas, but again, adjust those ideas with opportunities that can support them. So that's very, very important to remember this. Now, how important are failures for entrepreneurs? If we discussed this last week and we looked at this gentleman, um, Dan Pena, who is one of the wealthiest alumni that went through CSUN. And as you remember, he was a different gentleman, an older gentleman. And he was talking about to succeed in life, you need to work hard to succeed in life. You need to have disciplines to succeed in life. You need to come from a position where you were not in success that gives you ambition and stamina to keep growing and so forth. I went to the Marines. I went to Vietnam. I came back alive. That gave me the drive and disciplines. I was focused. I did martial arts, people, all these different things that was done Pena last week. And so he was talking about failures, and he says it's okay to fail. In fact, it's an opportunity to learn through failures. The idea is not to fail from the same thing again and again. The idea is to learn from the failures and only go through small failures. They are like just little steps. What's important is that you can measure yourself by failing and not failing again. You can look at the world as a world that you want to take no risks, but obviously you're not going to get anywhere. This gentleman you may know, his name is Marcus Lemonis, and he has a program where he goes and look at a store and he tries to help the people in those stores. And so it's very important to see that for him, to succeed in the store is you need to be humble. So he says when the owner of the store has too much ego, they put the ego into themselves and the appearance of success that they want the society to think of, versus the ego should be in the improvement that you do. You could start very small. It's the trajectory, it's the direction, it's the learning curve that is very important. And it's being open-minded, and it's the listening skills of the owner, of the entrepreneur that is very, very important. So he's an interesting gentleman. His shows are very popular, and he's done a lot of successful shows. I go back to this, you've seen it before, but it's this, what I think about those quadrants, those sections that are very important. First is you have to have those opportunities that support your business. You need to make sure that you do research to find those opportunities. You need to make sure that you do research in order to understand who are your customers. Who are your customers defined by this ST, segmentation and targeting. Segmenting is dividing. Targeting is selecting, and positioning is coming up with an image. The reality is PSTP, because most of the time people have an idea, which is more like a positioning where they want to be. Then they're looking at the market, and then they're adjusting to the market. You adjust to the market by looking at the customers, but you also adjust to the market by looking at the trends and also looking at your competitors. And all of this is done with research. And the idea is you need to bring value and satisfaction. And this value and satisfaction is very much what you're going to generate through the JND, the just noticeable difference. So again, innovation is very important because you need to come up with something that is different. To survive, you need to innovate. To survive, you need to be a leader, and you need to eventually build this leadership through the research and through the fact that you come up with something that is different and better for specific customers that you have identified. So opportunity generates strategies, and strategies generate action. So again, that's what I tried to teach in the previous class, and I want this to keep with you as this culture that I'm hoping that you have, which is that you do research because you want to succeed, not because you have time to waste. You do research to maximize your understanding of the trends and opportunities, the SWOT, the environment. And from this, from your opportunity, you generate strategies. That's why the best opportunities are the strategic opportunities. You've heard me say that 50 million times. Yes, more than the tactical opportunities, because from the opportunities, you want to come up with some strategies. What are the action? These are your tactics. So it's kind of like the big picture, the opportunity, the how you're going to do it, big picture, the strategies, and how you're going to do it, small picture, the tactics. Thinking as an entrepreneur versus by being myopic. Sears was entrepreneurial in how they created Sears, and they became one of the biggest retailing store catalog in the United States. Eventually, they became myopic, and Amazon, that was tiny, became non-myopic and entrepreneurial, and they succeeded. Blockbuster is the same thing, became Netflix. Visa is the same thing. Visa is still surviving, but Visa could have invented, could have invented Bitcoin, maybe, could have invented PayPal, could have been invented Venmo, could have invented Zelle and so forth. No, all of these were invented by other businesses that were thinking outside of the box. Kodak should have been iPhone, and the local swap meet should have been eBay, and so forth. So oftentimes the things are invented by someone outside, and the reason they invented from outside is because they are not comfortable. If you are comfortable where you are, how much motivation do you have in being different and innovative? Not that much. You don't want to be different because it's all going good for you. Why would you try to be different when everything is working out? So you don't want to, and you just become comfortable. And you're like in a tub, in a warm tub, just waiting for the time to go. And then someone comes and create this differentiation. This is what happened with iTunes. iTunes took the opportunity of the technology. That was a change of technology. And with this change of technology, they created a platform for the music industry. So now, what is the toilet turtle? Is it a turtle sitting on the toilet? No. Is it a toilet with the shape of a turtle? No. Is it a turtle that fell in the toilet? No. The toilet turtle is a plastic, like a cover of a takeaway food piece of plastic that goes over your toilet. It was invented by a realtor in Woodland Hills, a very successful realtor in Woodland Hills that decided to invent this product because it says when you're plunging with your toilet, you're splashing everywhere and it's dirty and people want to protect it. So he invented this piece of plastic and called it the toilet turtle. Have you ever seen it? No. Why? You've never seen it. Because the person who invented that invented it based on an idea. Oh, someone needs to create a plastic to go over the toilet. I'm going to do it because I'm smart. And I'm going to be taking this product and make millions of dollars. And eventually this person did nothing. And we even wrote a business plan for them and they did nothing. But the reality is it's tough when you go backwards. You should have an idea, find the opportunity, give up the idea, or refine the idea because you have the opportunity. But just doing the idea is very tough. Joy is a movie with Jennifer Lawrence, Robert De Niro, and Bradley Cooper, a movie that's received very high reviews. In fact, I strongly recommend that you see this movie called Joy. It's very entertaining. And in the past, I've actually asked the MUS students to actually look at the movie because they are questioning the quiz, but not this time, not this semester. But I sort of regret not asking you to watch the movie during the break, but I didn't. However, no, I still want to give you this tip. It's a great movie, and it's a true story of the lady which is on the right. It's a lady that had an idea, which was to create a mop. So she created this mop that where the mop is attached at the end. So everyone have seen it because you probably all have one at your house. Instead of having a mop that you throw on the ground and then you use some sort of broom and go over it and brush over and collect the mop, it looks like a set of strings at the end of the mop. And with those strings, you can collect everything. And then you can drain it and clean it straight from the mop or release the hand and then place a new one and so forth. So she came up with this idea because she ran into a problem herself. And that's the story of this movie. So it may look like very boring like this, but it's very entertaining. And so the issue is that she runs into is when she's created the product and produced the product, she has to think about where to sell it and how much to sell it. And so she does things very much like an amateur and a beginner. She has no business plan, no network, no money. She has no time, in fact, um, no skills, no resources, she's no training, no experience, nothing. Just a very energetic woman with an idea. And so the movie shows you that you can still succeed, but she has to sort of learn by making mistakes at every steps and learning from these mistakes. What's very interesting to me in this movie is in the middle of the movie, she ends up working with a TV and shows she does infomercials. And in this infomercial, there's a very famous football player who's retired, and he's part of those infomercials, and he just talks about the product in these infomercials. And the minute I saw this football player, I was start of laughing because actually I was contacted by this football player myself to sell my cognac. But I had a terrible feeling that this football player didn't know anything. So I'm not saying names and not accusing anyone. I mean, if someone at the time, they probably could put the thread back together. But anyway, I had the feeling this football player didn't know anything about spirits, anything about cognac. And he was just a product endorser, someone, that you pay and they talk nicely about the product. And so I was contacted by his manager and they asked me to spend something like $50,000 for this football player to talk about it on TV and so forth and to say it's the best cognac he's ever had and brag about it and all that. But I had the feeling that he would be talking about my product in a way that it would actually be negative. Anyway, I was laughing when I saw this movie because in the movie, this guy actually appears for real. And he does exactly that to her with her broom, and he totally screws up the broom. She sells nothing because he talks about the product in such a way, it's like a joke. And I knew I would have a bad time. And in fact, what happens is I actually gave the name of one of my competitor, a cognac brand, to that football player to contact them and ask if they would want to pay him $50,000 to endorse their product, which they did. So they spent $50,000 and it was a disaster. Anyway, it was an absolute disaster. So maybe I should not say that because I'm a professor. I'm supposed to be a good person. But I was laughing so hard thinking about these people, my competitors, spending $50,000 because I knew they had a big ego and that they would want to be with this big football player in America and all that. But the guy was terrible. This guy, in fact, started his own whiskey just a few months ago. So that was my deal with him that I didn't do was maybe 15 years ago. But he started his own whiskey a few months ago and it's terrible. And his whiskey is probably horrible and all this. But anyway, it's those people, they're celebrities and they end up doing everything. On one side, they do a perfume, and another side, they do a villa resort in Miami. On the other side, they sponsor a cruise. It's these people, they do all kinds of things, and brands get sucked away to think they can do everything because they have people that follow them. The reality is there is some extension that you can do among people, but there's some extensions that you can do where it doesn't fit with the character and the image of the person. So it's not just not being famous that makes you credible and legitimate to support a product. Here, someone that I think is wonderful and a true entrepreneur is Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V. Gary V has, I don't know, thousands of videos. He's probably one of the most followed in the United States. If you don't know him, I recommend that you go on your phone and you put his name and you follow him on Instagram, on Discord, on WeChat, on Cheap Cheap and Choot Choot, and whatever is the next thing is going to be the next big thing on Vine. It doesn't exist. So just on anything. And he's one of the most followed person that talks about entrepreneurship in the world. He started from nothing and he made big businesses to the point that now he owns a big advertising agency that even produces for Super Bowl ads and anything. So he talks about this concept that I like to talk about, the fact that you want to fall in love with the problem, not with your ideas. They say that, and these two individuals are multi-millionaires, and that's what they believe. I am not, but they are. But I believe this too because everything I've done when I've done it this way, that's what I've seen it working. Caring less about others people's opinion, that's one of their video. I recommend it because oftentimes people are listening to everyone, and that's again what's important. Like this football player, people are listening to him. I don't know why. Listen to the people that really know what they're talking about, not just the one that everybody seems to be listening because you may be making a mistake. chase your passion, stop chasing money. So that's another thing that's important in entrepreneurship is people that too focus on money get very dissatisfied because when you're an entrepreneur, most of the time, money doesn't come quick. There are some amazing stories. And in fact, if you look at the movie Joy, she actually will become pretty wealthy pretty quick. And she's currently a multi millionaire, maybe even richer than these two people on the screen right now. So she's a lady that is a good model, and she did more things than the mop. Eventually, she created her own distribution company, and she was one of the biggest player on this TV shopping. So she started in the 80s. So obviously, TV shopping in the 90s were very big, not so much anymore, but still. Falling in love with the problem, not the solution, what really takes to become a successful entrepreneur. So these videos are not very long. He sometimes uses bad language. So if you're someone that doesn't like people to speak with bad language, you're going to be irritated from the get-go. But the reality is behind, I think there's someone that is very sophisticated and a really nice person. He helps a lot of people. He's extremely popular and he deserves it. Jane, actually, anyone knows Gary Vaynerchuk in the course? Okay, so Morgan, and I hope it's more than Morgan. Yeah, so we've got good bunch of people. What do you think of Gary? Charlie, go ahead. What do you think of Gary?
Oh, I think Gary's cool. He's really consistent and he puts in a lot of work into content. I like how he keeps it blunt, straightforward with people. And I've seen people cry in like clips of like how
Yes,
he really does paradigm shifts with the way of thinking with mindsets. So it's really a great source.
that's correct. So it can be irritating. That's why I said, he's I think he's Belarusian, and he came to America, and they were like 10 people in one bedroom, and he lived like that for more than a decade. So there's a gentleman has a tough skin. He came with nothing, he suffered, and so therefore he has a low tolerance for people that are crying, cry babies, and that's how he is. Yes. Morgan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm personally not a fan. I think he has some good ideas. I think that overall, like his whole perspective, like I mean, it's been said before more eloquently than I could say it, but like about like hustle culture and just like basically as an entrepreneur, you have to sacrifice your own like wellness and well-being.
Yes,
I think that has ultimately created more harm than good with a lot of people's mindsets going. And I don't think it has to be that way. I do think that he has helped a lot of people,
yes,
but and I think he's extremely influential.
yes,
And his ideas have sort of like, you would be silly to argue that he has not really changed the game for a lot of people, but
for sure.
I also think that some of his business practices are uh kind of toxic. And
Yes,
but that like,
yeah,
whatever works for you.
yes, I agree 100% with you. And in fact, I was very sad when I heard that he was divorcing because I followed him since 2003. So I know he started in 98. But since 2003, I followed him, and then 2004 on YouTube. And then he got married a little bit after this. Then he got kids. Then he was just the proudest husband, the proudest father, and all this. And I was glad because I was like, how can he maintain all of this and so much passion and all the things he did? And what a year ago, 2 years ago, you could see things were not going good. And so you're right, there's a balance in life. It's not a 100-meter race. It's a marathon. And so I think his formula is not good for everyone. And a lot of people can get hurt going through his formula. But
It's
I
not the
think,
only way to do it.
yeah, it's
Like,
not the only way exactly. But I think he brings a perspective that is interesting. But everyone has to listen to at least three people, and then you make your own recipe. I don't think
yeah.
anyone should listen to one person because it's not possible to find one. So the rule of thumb is three. I'm saying minimum. If you listen to more than that, it's great. But it should be three, between three different guru And if Gary is one of them, that's okay. But if only Gary is your guru, that's the problem. Exactly.
Bad.
But it's
But
awesome.
yeah, like he's got good ideas, but
Yeah.
also I'm concerned for him and the people around him.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's important. We got that. The J&D is very important. I repeat myself. So why do you care? Because the J&D is directly related to your customers. Why you have a business? Because you have a customers. You have no customers, you have no business. And the J&D is what you're going to do for them, that they notice you and they want you because there's something better. Here's a client that I worked with more than 10 years ago. Weetabix for American means not that much. But if you're a British person or from New Zealand or from South Africa or from Australia, you've had Weetabix maybe at least once a week. If you're from Great Britain, it could be once a day. So it's the most famous Great Britain breakfast cereal. It's like the Kellogg's cornflakes, for the Americans. And so it's a big company that does extremely poorly in the United States. So it's funny to be the number one in one country and the number 100,062 in another country. So to me, that was a great challenge. So I looked at this business and I was wondering why it doesn't sell. And really, it doesn't sell because it doesn't appeal to kids. Why would it happen to appeal to kids? Well, it's missing a character, it's missing colors, it's missing something fun. The product looks dry. The product looks like you're gonna be stuck having a hard time going to the toilets or something. It's just all negative. And so by looking at this, we started to think about what can you do to make the product better. And then we realized the kids, they like to eat while they walk. So the Go-Gurt was some of the the concept that we wanted to go after, but we wanted to put protein inside and we wanted to do a mix. And so we created Go Wito. Go Wito was the product that would go with the people walking, and they would have their Weetabix while they walk, and they would have the little a character that will be speaking and being fun and all the connections and so forth, all that. We did this. Weetabix looked at it and said, no way. And they kept doing what they did before. And therefore, that's why if I ask anyone here, how many Weetabix did you have in the last 2 years? And your answer is zero. And likelihood of getting it again is zero. So that's kind of sad. You have to go with the customers, understand the customers in order to sell the product. It's not because you're number one and feeling very comfortable in one country that you will automatically become number one in the other country. So you have to think about that just noticeable difference and create a just noticeable difference, which speaks to the market where you're trying to sell the product. Now, I wanted to show you something. This is true if you're in the music, this is true if you're in the breakfast cereal, but this is true in anything. In 1993, I was like you, 1993, doing my master, my MBA. And when I was doing my MBA, at the end of the MBA, we had to write a thesis. So it was like a 300 pages you have to write at the end, and you have to do it on a specific subject. I was in Scotland, in the north of Scotland, in Stirling, between Glasgow and Edinburgh, and in that university doing my paper. And then I was thinking, what am I going to do? And so I decided to work on a subject that I found interesting. So that was my idea. I like the things that have to do with luxury brands. But then, is anyone cares about luxury brands? And obviously, there was a lot of people caring about luxury brands. But the gap that I found is there was not too many people speaking about it in English. So I'm one of, if not the first, human being on earth to write in English and do research on luxury brands. It was done in French, Italian, and German, but for some reason, not too much in English. So in 1993, I started doing this and I started writing papers. So I found my own little entrepreneurial differentiation, innovation in the world of academia. It's exactly the same thing. Entrepreneurship is not just the music industry, it's also the academia industry. So I did this. Just for fun, this morning I looked at the citation. 6,381 citation. For you, it doesn't mean anything, but it means that I'm the highest ranked professor in the largest business school in California, which is CSUN, the David Nazarian. I have the most. Just to give you the average is 400. The average professor's citation is about between 200 and 400. I have 6,381. I'm not bragging about myself. I'm just telling you, I'm a professor of entrepreneurship. If I was only good at teaching it, I guess it's good. but I'm also practicing it. There's a number of situations where I knew nothing. I knew nothing about cognac, and I became three-time world-best cognac producers. I knew nothing about research. I was an MBA student and I wrote papers that got me to be now this and that. What I'm trying to say is what philosophy I'm teaching you about entrepreneurship can be applied to music, but also academia, also in anything. If you tomorrow you want to start a franchise of lemon juice, you can use it too. It works for all of this. It's a concept. So now I've created this concept, which is called the Brand Luxury Index that measures the amount of luxury in brands. And I've been doing this, and that's one of the things I should have launched a long time ago, but I'm only doing it now. And I've collected a lot of data and creating this consulting firm that specializes in this. In fact, I have two logos. One is A on the left, another one is B on the left. And I wanted to pick your brain to ask you which one you think looks the best, A or B. And what do you think? Which one do you think looks better, A or B?
I really like B. I think it's very sleek. I like the raising kind of icons, kind of metaphor to like raising, value.
Okay, thank you, John. Appreciate that. That was the idea. Yes, Morgan.
I also like the raising icons, but the font the font feels like a very sort of old-fashioned version of wealth, which is and luxury, which is I guess fine, but it's giving a little bit outdated to me.
Okay. This is the feedback I'm getting, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exact feedback.
It doesn't feel
It doesn't feel modern.
contemporary or young or
Yeah, that's what people
modern,
say. Yeah, exactly.
but it does feel like I like the concept.
The concept. Yeah. Okay. Wow, that's awesome. You see, validation of what I'm getting. I was just playing with you since the last class. Oh, hopefully that this gives me luck to succeed with this. The logo is not everything, but it's good to have a good logo. Yes, Asha.
I like A because it looks like prestigious and powerful. Like people associate it with strength and a certain group of prestige, like it says. I like A. It looks
So
strong.
maybe, so what do you think of having A as the font?
The
Like
font
Morgan,
on A looks like something I would see in a window on a building, um, on a brochure. But the font on B, I like the font. I would. It's very readable. The readability is easier.
yes.
Um, B looks like a business card. It doesn't
Yeah.
take me anywhere. Like I can imagine A in different scenarios other than just giving information. You know, like it looked
Okay.
like it could be the first three letters of a law office or a doctor's on a doctor's door or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ashley. I appreciate it. I'll keep working on it. That's great. Thank you for this. So the
What do you like better?
well, but the reality is I try to listen so that way I can interpret because when you look at something too long, you lose your
Perspective.
judgments. Yeah, you
Yeah.
become very contained. So but I agree with this. The modern feel, the contemporary is missing. The concept is good because of the scale and the fact that it's a rating, but the font it has to be updated. Something about even the gold, the way the gold goes through
It's
this
on the
is very,
black.
there's a little bit of a old school gold fake
Yeah.
90s, maybe even 80s. So it just doesn't work. So, you know, it needs to be a fusion between the two, but that way I can get a C, A, B, and C will be the next fusion. And, I may not be done with it because eventually, maybe in 1 year, I just keep updating it, but at least it's going into a certain concept direction that I like. So these company, Freytag, was created by two students, two master students, looking at the window of their dorm, and they were looking at the freeway, and they kept seeing those big trucks go by. And then one of them said, I wonder what they do with the top on the truck. So one of them jumped on the Google and searched and found that not too far from where they were, those tops were collected and recycled. So they went there, and then they decided to create Freytag, which is this company that makes bags using the top, recycled top from trucks. They got very successful. In fact, you can find their website, freytag.com. They're from Switzerland, and they sell those bags everywhere in the world. Very, very successful. What's interesting about this is you could say, they had an idea and they were successful. Sometimes they are, but the success was from the fact that there were people looking for different designs, for recycled type of products. And so there were opportunities that would go with the idea. As long as there is opportunity that helps you, you're good. Here's another example. Tigo, the great outdoor gym company. This company created gyms that you put in the local park, and when people use the gym, they produce electricity for the city. So then you say, that's an idea. Will it ever work? Well, it could work as long as there is people that care for going to there and doing the gym. So there are more people going to these because they are doing something good for the city versus going to a gym section that just you do jumps and pumps and all this, but it doesn't do nothing. Here, they felt like they were producing something good, being part, and you can actually see how much electricity you created for the city when you came to the gym. So there was a good amount of production and people supported it. So the opportunities, do people care for their town? If they care for their town, do people care for sustainability, for ecology? People care. Do people care to go to the gym? Yes. Do people care if the gym is free? People care. So as long as there is a market, a target, a customer, then you're good. California Closets, very famous company in California, they make the closet the way you see it right now. Eventually, COVID came and people stayed home. Eventually, they found a lot of people didn't want to go back to the office. And eventually, they found lots of people wanted to work from home. So suddenly, California Closet, what did they do? They created a section of their business that builds offices. Offices in addition to the closet. So it's still called California Closets, not called California Offices. It's called California Closet, and they have one of the product line now, which is special section of offices inside people's bedroom and so forth. So that's very important to see this. Follow the trends, follow the market, find the gap, find the problems. So I tell you, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. For everyone who asks receives, he who seeks finds, and to whom he knocks, the door will be opened. I'm not asking you to be religious, I'm just asking you to be spiritual just for a minute. It's the idea that people that don't do anything, nothing bad happens to them. The people that get successful are the people who do things. And the first thing you need to do is knock at the door, talk to some people, because what's the most important thing in business? Network. Network is number one. So if you go and knock at doors, that's how you start building networks. Okay, so I'm trying to make a lot of circles and close them today. We did this before, so I'll go very quick. What is a business plan? A business plan does not exist. It's a plan that has multiple plans inside. HR, accounting, production, timeline, legal, marketing, and operation. Okay, so marketing is one plan that really exists, and if you put it inside a document, that becomes one chapter of your business plan. So now, what is marketing? Marketing is the delivery of customer satisfaction at profit and long term. What's the most important in marketing? Satisfaction. Why do we care about satisfaction? Is because we want people to come back. We want to maintain customers, and we cost a lot of money to create new customers, so you make more profit with existing customers. Can you create needs? Can you make people buy things? You can make people buy things, but you can't create needs. Needs exist, and you just satisfy existing needs. That's very important. You just create new wants. I want Red Bull. No, you don't want Red Bull. You want Monster. No, I don't want Monster. You want the next brand. So that's what it is. It's keep changing people's wants. Needs are born. You have those feelings of needs because something is lacking and you cannot create needs. You can only satisfy them. Wants you can create, and demands is actually wants that people can pay for. So in marketing, what you do, you look for problems in your environment in order to make a business decision. And what you do is you're also looking at your competitors, you're looking at the type of resources you have, and you're looking at being unique and creating an entrepreneurship and leadership and so forth. Where do you look? You look in your environment. In your environment, you have the micro environment, which is the gray part, the one that's closest to you, the company, and you have the macro, the one that is further away, indirectly affecting the micro and affecting you. Okay, so I'm going very quick on this because you see, that's why I said you cannot take the class before and ignore it for the next class because you are using this right now in order to do your one page, essentially. How we're using it? You're using it because you're doing the personal analysis. You're using it because you're doing the SWOT analysis. Okay. Now, are you going to be presenting the SWOT? No. Did you present it the last class? No. That was cool, actually, Professor. I was so glad we didn't have to present the SWOT, that we did it in a much more innovative way by having a storytelling where we went through the SWOT without going through the SWOT. Exactly. In this class, you do the same thing because that's the best way to do it. In fact, you have to do it, but not presenting it this way. Opportunities are not what you're going to do. Opportunities are facts. Hopefully you remember this and you build from facts. Success is not so obvious. So the point I want to make here is that when you're an entrepreneur, the one word that you hear the most from other people is no. So you have to get used to the no. Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know. People don't know. So, for example, the most famous book by Victor Hugo is La Légende des siècles. When he came up with this book, nobody wanted to publish it. People thought it was terrible. Well, and Queen had the hardest time selling the idea of even producing and distributing Bohemian Rhapsody. If you go on Google right now and you put what is the most liked song in any language anywhere in the world for the past 200 years, Bohemian Rhapsody probably will be in the top 5. Being in the top 5 today, we know. But at the time, people said no way for Bohemian Rhapsody. And you know, one of the reasons why nobody thought it was going to be successful, and obviously someone knows in this class, it has to be. Why was Bohemian Rhapsody looked down by everybody and saying he's never going to go anywhere? Well, there were several reasons, but there was one very obvious. At the time of Bohemian Rhapsody, the songs were 2 minutes. Bohemian Rhapsody is what, 7 minutes. So everyone says a 7-minute song is never going to go anywhere. Nobody cares for 7 minutes. So what I'm trying to say by this is if you're an entrepreneur, you have to have a tough skin because everyone is going to say it won't work. It's not good. So you have to get used to this. And you have to keep going, but you don't keep going because you're obsessive and tenacious and close-minded. Is you keep on going because you've done your research and you know your opportunities are solid. You didn't make them up. If you didn't make up your opportunities and they really exist, you don't have to worry about the people's opinion. But you don't want to say, I don't want to listen to anyone, but you should listen to the people that really matters, the people that know about what you're talking about. But that's one thing. The other aspect is also to look at the world. The world is changing. Whatever trends was in 1913 was not the same as the trends in 2013 and won't be the same as the trend in 2026. So, which means that whatever success you have today is based on yesterday's trend. So therefore, the trends are changing. And because the trends are changing, we all have a chance to succeed because we can be the first one to pick on the trend. So that's what it is. IBM may not be picking on the trend faster than you are. It's not because IBM has been doing it longer than you that you can't do it. Crocs. Crocs, isn't that honorable shoes? Someone comes and say, I'm going to do Crocs and sell Crocs. I say, good luck to you. What's the opportunity? Oh, I don't know what is the opportunity. Then I say, best luck to you. Not interested to invest. But then this person says, no, 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 no. Certain people don't want to spend a lot of money. Certain people want a shoes that is made from one mold. Some people smell from their feet. They don't want to smell from their feet. Some people don't care of their looks. They only want functionality. They want comfort. They want to put the feet in, to put the feet out. They don't care if it looks ridiculous. They just want to be comfortable. Some people, they're worried that the shoe is going to fall in the water in this ocean and lose the shoe. They also worried that the shoe may be slippery and they may be falling. Wow, how many people? Can you do a tam, sam, sum of that? Yes. Wow, I love your tam, sam, sum. Now I want to invest. Bingo. This is Crocs. Balenciaga even is partnering with Crocs. That's crazy, but true. Not a 1st of April story. Nike, what do they do? Well, they try to do different design, but they invest in technology and make sure that they adapt the technology to their shoes. So technology is an opportunity, and they use this opportunity in order to make the shoes. The Lone Mower. So what is this? This is for men shaving. Whoa, Manscaped. That's the big brand. Why is this suddenly something? Because men are shaving in a different way and they have different rituals and so forth. So therefore, there's a problem. Here's a solution. Here's a new brand, and here's how we're going to do it. Now, here's a brand everybody knows. You all know WeatherTech. Why you know it? Because he's one of the richest men in America. David McNeil. In fact, he's one of the biggest political contributor in the United States of America. He gives hundreds of millions of dollars to politicians. His favorite politician in history is named Donald Trump. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, anyway, this is someone that's making so much money not ripping people off. In fact, the dog that you see here is his dog, I think, on the picture. So it's a family business. He runs this as a family business, but the number one reason for success is he makes product in America for Americans who love American-made product. Do people care for made in America? Not everyone, but some do. So that's what he does. Another thing is he makes product that really solve problems. What problem do you have in your car? I have this problem. Oh, okay. No, I have a problem, David McNeil. What problem you have? When I go to the gas station, I feel all achy touching the pump. Oh, no problem. Let me make a glove. Here's the problem. Here's the solution. Here's the business. And so that's how he thinks. Here's another man that was thinking that way, Steve Jobs, right? Is we're going to be different. Think different. The Think Different Men and always come up. There's wonderful videos of the Think Different Men. But remember this is how do you explain why so many products fail? Because they're not understanding that you have to have an opportunity, that you need to focus on the customers, that you need to think about all the plan and all the research and differentiate yourself and so forth. This was in the quiz. That was your first quiz, I think, from the previous class, but I want you to still be in connection with this. How would you go about reducing marketing costs? That's the other thing is it's expensive to do marketing, so you need to think about keeping this low. So you're working on your one page. We looked at this last week. Just keep looking at it, making sure that you see. I actually made a three-pager, which I posted in the announcement just to make your life easier. It was already inside the canvas, but I put it together so that way I made sure everybody got it. I made sure everybody got the rubrics, make sure everybody got the two samples, and those two samples are self-explanatory. It's about talking about the time, sum, sum. This is important. Time, sum, and sum is easy. The problem with the time, sum, sum is the penetration rate. So here it shows three parts, but really there's four parts. The last part is the penetration rate, which is done at the end of doing the sum. So the hardest thing is identifying the penetration rate. And here, this is recorded, so you can always go back to it, but the penetration rate is something that you're making up. How do we evaluate it? Well, it needs to be evaluated based on how much money in marketing you're going to spend is equal to the likelihood of you having a good penetration rate. The less money you spend in marketing, the most unlikely your penetration rate is going to be big. So you spend very little money in marketing, your penetration rate is going to be 1% or less. If it's a massive market, 1% maybe is sufficient. But if it's a tiny market, at some stage, 5%, maybe just a few customers, and therefore you have to think of bigger numbers. So the penetration rate is something you're going to totally make up. You're not going to make up the TAM and the SAM and the sum. That's statistical, it's numbers, it has to be sourced and so forth. But the penetration rate, you're going to try to convince the investors that your penetration rate is correct because you have good analysis, assessment of what you think your marketing campaign strategies and tactics will generate in terms of sales. So penetration rate is very important, and that's what you should focus on. So in the sample, I put the Vini list where you can see the time sum. They discuss the penetration rate. You see here, it's a 0.5%. It's really small. So 0.5, eventually when you present it, you have to say, what's the number? How many thousand, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. What is it? So there's the 410. So if it was 1%, it's 4,100. If it's half of that, it's 2,000 people. But maybe 2,000 people is too low. So I think hopefully we told them that you need to have a much bigger number. So you have to come up with numbers that are plausible, realistic, energizing as well. And it's kind of a better investment than real estate. That's the idea. Is this investing in you? Is it better than real estate? If it's better than real estate, maybe people will invest in you. Now, here I want to talk about the fact that there are many strategies, and you don't want to confuse strategies and tactics. And you want to see the strategy is the bigger picture, and the tactic is the smaller picture. The most famous strategies that you want to sort of take away with you once you graduate is there's the four basic one: market penetration, product development, market development, and diversification. You need to remember these because they are the 101 of strategies. You've had several classes on strategies. Eventually, it's important that you remember those basic ones because you want to use them in your presentation. You most likely will use the one called product development. You probably will use it many times in your career. You will suggest it to many people, and therefore you need to be very knowledgeable about the steps, the 8 steps of new product development, from this idea generation, the screening, the development, the developing the strategies, the thinking about the business and how it's going to run, and then doing some testings and trying to sell the product. But there's more strategies, and I just put them there. This is several times that you've seen them, so I'll go through them very quickly. One that you don't want to forget, which is very much of a graduate type of knowledge, is the one that is called pull versus push strategy. And the pull is when you advertise directly to the customers for the customers to hear about the product and want the product. So this is maybe social media, and there's a buzz, and everyone wants this new perfume, this new chair, this new game, or whatever. Versus the push is you telling them, if you buy now, you get 50% off. If you buy now, you get 2 for the price of 1. If you buy now, you get a enter in a game. If you buy now, we send you a coupon. It's the promotional one, push. And so it's important to see that you can do both at the same time. It's expensive to do both, but that's how you get the most out of your marketing campaign. And just here is the same type of things, and here is the same type of things. These are available. They just summarize all the different strategies. You just have to remember that. And eventually, you have to remember that there are the 4 Ps: price, promotion, product, and place. That has to be understood and developed when you discuss the final service, products, whatever you're going to sell. Another thing is when you talk about your analysis of the market, you need to talk about your competitors. So this slides is available in the last PDF, but it's also available in the other classes, the previous class. So you want to go back to it, but what you need to remember, the most important is benchmarking is looking at the strengths and weaknesses of your competitors. That's the minimum you want to remember. But there's other things you want to look at. You want to try to look at their resources, their innovation, the target that they focus on, their positioning, analyze their pricing, analyze their suppliers, and then look at benchmarking not just in California, but in other states and in other countries and with other targets. Now, finally, what I want you to take away from this is this table. This table is the 101 most convenient, easiest table that you would want to use in your final presentation. Should you use it for the one sheet? No. Should you use it for the second presentation? Maybe no. Should you use it for the final presentation, the one that you're going to have, 15, 20 minutes? Oh, yes. Is it just hear me correctly, is 100% chance that you should be using a table like this. What's great with this table is one slide almost says it all. 1, it shows the most important competitors. 2, it shows the point of differentiation. 3, it shows the just noticeable difference. It shows all of this, and it's a very strong visual slide for presenting. On top of my head like this, I don't remember if anyone did present this in the previous class. Maybe not, but maybe for the previous class, looking at a different artist and different band, maybe it was not. the most appropriate. But for this class where you're coming up with your own entrepreneurial business, you will have competitors, and it is very convenient to use this. Did I ever say you need to remember this to the point that you should take your phone and screenshot the screen right now just to make sure you remember? I've never said that, but right now I feel like saying that. Don't forget this slide. At least it will save your life. I'm hoping that Professor Mackenzie will be reinforcing this. Normally, it should be. Yes, Morgan.
I also really like the comparison chart because it lays out all of the client's needs or concerns or wants in a
Exactly.
really like all-in-one, super concise. And so it
Exactly.
makes you seem like you're really knowledgeable about all the things they could possibly want. You know what they want. You've researched what they want. So like it's useful for on both axes, I think.
Yes. And so since you're saying this, I want to jump on it because what's very important is when I tell the students what's the most important thing is the opportunities, which opportunity is the best one is the customer, right? If we go back to the shrinking, most important opportunity of all the environment, the micro, which one is the customer, and what's the most important thing you can do to search the customer is not a Google search, it's not a report search, it's not a one search, a library search, it's an interview of the customer. So if I boil it down to, let's say you didn't do nothing and you started working the night before on your final presentation. Grab someone, ask them questions, and find the opportunity that coming out of their mouth. That's the best one. And then justifying by saying, we did research, we interviewed 6 people. Out of the 6 people, here's what they said. Kind of like what we did with my logo brand, right? There's repetition between what people say. Everything you said was already what I collected from other people. So it keeps repeating it. Do I need to do this to 1,000 people? No, I'm going to get the same thing. No, I know. But what's very important is how do you differentiate yourself? You differentiate yourself by looking at the customers with a new set of desire. It's like everybody looks at the customers with the same set of desire. Look at them with a new set of desire. It's like, you have a phone? Yes. If hypothetically, what would you want to do with your phone? Well, I would like to pay my gym bills. Okay. Oh, maybe we should create an app for that. I would like to be able to film my sister wedding. Oh, maybe we could do a camera with that. And that's what happens is suddenly you put, here's my phone, and here's all what the phone does. So suddenly you have a different set of competitors that you didn't have before, maybe. And this new set of competitors is creating the new characteristics of the product and the new desire of the product for a specific group of customers. So it's like looking at the customers in a new way, totally new way.
I
And
think
that's very important.
as a
What?
cons
Yeah.
as a consumer or as like an investor, it also looking at charts like this makes me feel like the power is in my hands to make the decision and that you are not like marketing hard to me. You're just sort of giving me all the information about all the options. Like it has like very much a, well, here are your choices kind of thing.
That's right.
I'm just going to be real with you about what you get with these fancy little check marks. But like you're just seeing all the stuff out there. So you make the choice, which I feel like consumers kind of depends, but
Yeah,
it's helpful.
you're right, because consumers oftentimes they you can frame them and you can sort of brainwash them by steering them towards your direction
Right.
and saying my product is better because it does this, this, and this, and this, and that. And then they go, oh, like I don't even know if I need those things, but suddenly I'm realizing those things that you do. Oh, you better, yeah. Oh,
Right.
thank you
But
for
ultimately it's up to you though.
yeah.
Like
Ultimately, yes.
like, oh, I'm
So
just a humble little marketer here.
exactly. So it's a fantastic table. Will be very sad if I see a group that doesn't use a table like this because it's just easy. Your life is going to be easy, and by just making this, you're going to make yourself more noticeably different, and the product will stand out. So now, when you do research, and I already said it, but I'm going to go very quick, is you should be doing exploratory research. What does that mean? It means you're going to collect existing data. But when you do exploratory research, most important is you're going to do interviews. So do that. Don't worry about a survey. Because to do a survey well, you have to do exploratory research. So you're never going to get to the survey because you won't do very well the exploratory research. So do a good job with exploratory research. Then another thing that I think is I just want to bring back is this concept of brand equity. So people buy functions of the product. Here we are. That's what we are discussing with Morgan, the functions of the product. But people also buy the brand. So what do you do to your brand? How do you make your brand more interesting? So for example, right now with my other class, we're working for a client which has a farm in Los Angeles that produces flowers. So there's two farms in Los Angeles that produces flowers. One that is not very far from CSUN, and the flowers they produce are in the indigenous, native, original LA flowers, very unique. And the farm is a minority-owned woman, African American. So that's also very interesting, is that it's a minority that run that farm. They are also non-profit. They do all kinds of cool things. It's called Black Thumb Farms. And so Black Thumb Farms is our client. And we just realized that they have an issue with the fact that they do amazing flowers, but people don't know. So people buy flowers in Costco and Home Depot and online and all this. Maybe they go to and then they realize that these flowers, 90% come from Colombia and they imported, and they use a crazy amount of carbon footprint and so forth. But there's a few farms. Most of them, 99% of them, are far away, like Santa Barbara and further away, and they sell in the farmers market. And then in LA, you have one farm, which is Black Thumb Farm, and then another one, which is not as close to LA, but a little outside of LA. And they are the only two. And so we are looking at their brand equity right now. And first, before we try to sell those flowers, is we have to build that image, build that image of that specific flowers, understanding who's the customers and coming up. And so what we're coming up right now is trying to work with non-profit organization, with other non-profit organization, with people that care for women-owned business, minority-owned business. Work also with Hollywood celebrities because they love to support those small businesses. They also can do a real big buzz, and the big buzz that comes from an Hollywood celebrity could have a big impact on them, where suddenly people will be seeking those flowers. Right now, nobody seeks their flowers because nobody even knows that they're there. So how do they sell them? They actually sell them through a bakery whose the bakery is a friend of them, and they sell it at the bakery, or whoever runs into the farm, because they also sell vegetables, so they're not too unsuccessful with the vegetables. People will go there and say, oh, you also do flowers, I take some flowers, but it's just a random luck that they sell any of those flowers. Anyway, so every business can gain from understanding the concept of brand equity and how to build it. What do you do to get visibility? What do you do to create those slogans? What do you do for people to perceive quality? And what do you do to reinforce a relationship with your customers where eventually they become loyal and eventually they do the marketing for you? So that's very important. This is my directly segue to, again, something I talked earlier, to the fact that you have to look at the customers, and by your new definition of the customers and what they like, this becomes your just noticeable difference, and this becomes your point of differentiation. Like, again, the table here is these are point of differentiation that you've created by looking at a new definition of who are your customers compared to who they were before and your competitors' customers. When you do this, you have to understand the fact that, and that's very important. So it's a lot to remember, but you have to remember that when you are a small business, you're more likely to be successful if you do a differentiated marketing strategy, which means that you make one product for one target. So this concept of being niche, being differentiated, being focused is usually the better strategy in order to be successful when you're a small business. Why? You have limited resources. You cannot do too many things in too many places. So with these limited resources, you're going to do the most damage in one place, on one customer group. And your definition of this customer is very important because you're going to understand them very, very, very well. That's why you need to have an opportunity, create the product, and then sell the product. And that's why you should have positioning that comes after you've defined who are the customers. Positioning is next. It's this image that you will create for the customers. So this table, you've seen it before, but it's the flow. um, identify the characteristics of segmentation, which is the hardest thing, then select the target, which you should call persona in your presentation, which you've done all of you very well in the previous class. So those personas are explained by having some behaviors, by having some demographics, by having some economic definition and psychographics definition and so forth. And after this, then you explain what is the image that you will sell this product. What's very important is what I call the chicken or the egg, is how do you really go about it in real life? I know that in the class, you will say STP because you want to try to get a good grade, because you've been very focused on learning and so forth. The minute you step out of the class, you will do PST. Why? Because 99% of the people, they do this. They go back to my ID is this, my ID is this, my ID is this. But you have to be very careful that your ID may be just your ID and nobody else's ID. So that's why you want to do PSTP. Here's my ID. Is there anyone care? Yes, this person care. And then you just adjust it. So I should do it just for fun. See if even there's anything on the internet or even in ChatGPT that talks about PSTP. Maybe not yet, but eventually probably they will explain it the way I'm explaining it because that's the truth. Most people think about PST and realize that's one of the reasons why they fail is they thought of the product before they thought of the customer. How do you break your customers? I was talking about the hardest thing is segmentation, is breaking the customers. Just remember this table. You break them by culture, social, personal, psychological, economical, and so forth. But you also break them by the fact that not everyone is equal. Some people buy the product early and some people buy the product late because, and that's why I bring it up there. I hope I'm covering a lot of things tonight, but because you're an entrepreneur within a startup, for you, you cannot ignore this slide because you can only go for the innovators and early adopters. And that's what you're going to tell us. You're not going to say, oh, we're going to sell to customers. Who are your customers? Oh, everybody. And how are you going to sell it to them? Oh, we're just going to put the product on social media and everybody's going to see it and everybody's going to punch their credit card. That's false. Doesn't happen that way. So what you have to do is you have to create the movement. You have to create the momentum. You can use social media to create the movement. Who is it that you're going to use to do the influencing? Who are those innovators that are going to help you bring it to the early adopters? The sign of success is not to have influencers using the product, but to have early adopters using the product because your products go through the life cycle, which is what you do before you sell, when you introduce, when you grow, when you mature, and then when you remove the product, because the idea of a business, and so you have to conceptualize that. When in May, you come and present at the end, this needs to be very clear, that you are trying to justify and convince us of an investment for one or two products. But you already have been thinking about these one and two products as the beginning of a chain of products, because eventually, as a business, you think in terms of growth. And growth comes from profit, but growth comes from product development, having different products at different time and growing. And this gets me to the point of talking about the break-even analysis. Okay, so the break-even analysis is I would say, if we go back very quickly, I want to jump back to this slide. A lot of times I ask you this question, what's the most important? What is the function that is the most important in a business plan? It's very debatable, but I think, and it's not written there, but it's the finance. It's the accounting and budget, if you want. It would be inside this. It's the money discussion. Because the hardest thing in business, I think it's networks. It's not the money, but you cannot ignore the money. And the problem of ignoring the money is that your network, they may like you, but they won't do anything if they don't see that there's a high likelihood of making money. So do you want a big margin? Most likely you want a big margin. But if you don't have a big margin, you need to have a big volume of sales. So someone makes 90% margin and someone makes 5% margin. Which one is the best? It depends. How many products do they sell? If the one that makes 90% margin sells 100 products and the one that makes 5% margin sells 1 million product, you're better off with the million product. However, Is it likely to sell 1 million product? Is it going to take a short time, a long time? And so this, I think, and what I'm saying right now is really to steer you, is I think if I had to say is the most important one is maybe the finance. Number one. It's either the finance or the marketing. But because I don't want to sound biased, that if I say the marketing, it'd be easy. I'm a marketing person. But the reality is, from experience, doing it again and again and again. And then if you look at the Shark Tank, that's what makes the deal. The shark likes the idea, the shark likes the evidences, opportunities being discussed, but right away they jump into how much does the product cost? How much are you going to sell the product? How many do you anticipate to sell? Because they want to know when is the return on investment. How many products? If they feel the number of products is too high, they feel this person didn't do their homework, they won't want to invest. If they sense that this person has done their homework and the number they expect to sell the product for, that the price they expect to sell the product for, that the amount of money that they expect to make from the product, all of this is reasonable, and they have a good feeling about the person, and they see this person is a good negotiator, which means that they're not giving too many percentage for too much money, because that's someone that is unrealistic. Someone's going to be very difficult to manage. If this person has a big ego, it's going to be not fun to work with a big ego person. Because the reality is the shark should have the big ego. If there's someone in the room that should have the big ego, it's the shark, not the one that is asking to give away 20% of their business for $150,000. That's not the one that should have the big ego. And so if they sense this person has a big ego, it's only going to get worse. And they're out. But if they feel that the discussion around the money is correct, then this is very good. So it is important, and it's not something that we're asking you at the beginning, even though some people do it at the beginning for the one sheet. I think, gave you one sample as a break-even analysis on it for that purpose to make you start thinking about it sooner, better than later. If you don't do it in the one sheet, it's not the end of the world, but you need to have some broad ideas in the one sheet, not specific ideas, such as having a full break-even analysis. But at the end, you need to have the full break-even analysis to be really able to talk about the different costs and profit and revenues that you'll have and how many products you expect to sell. And I would say every year there's a group, I'm like, oh, everything was perfect, but they expected to sell a lot of products with a tiny marketing budget. That's unrealistic. So then I meet with Professor Mackenzie and I said, did you see that group? Oh my God, he says, I don't know why they did that. When we rehearsed, their budget was much bigger. I don't know why they reduced their budget. And then they increase the number of products. How can you increase the number of products you sell by reducing the budget? Why did they do that? And I say, well, yeah, I can't explain why. And so there is always one group that screws up out of four. But I don't know if you understand me. It's like it's like if you're spending very little trying to get customers, you will get very few customers, and therefore you won't be able to convince anyone that you're going to sell thousands of products to customers if those customers are hard to believe that they will ever hear about your products. Okay? Do you have any questions on all of these? No? So it was a lot. 2 hours, no, an hour and a half almost without stopping talking. So I give you a lot of information. Is there anything that you may have questions that is still unclear on all of this? It's like I'm gonna do like the casino where you roll the thing and then pick one, boom. Oh, the rubrics, right? Explain the opportunity. Justify the opportunity with research. Explain this gap and what you will do in order to serve this gap. Is it clear what you're trying to do for the customers, the value proposition? Explain the features. Remember the features, that's what we had in the competitive thing. is that these were the features. Explain the features. So would you have that many features at the beginning? Maybe not. But you need to have some, at least 3 features. Does the one sheet propose a basic estimation of the sales? So just do a bit. What I'm trying to say is you won't fail from having a bad one, but you will fail from not having one at this point. Not having one is what is really bad. Having a bad one, they had it. Does the one sheet present basic startup goals? So you need to say, the goals is to be in this market, sell this many products, have this many collaboration, have this many posts, have this many events, sponsors, whatever. Some goals. Who are your competitors? So there you could start working on your table of competitors. Does the one sheet explain who is your company and what's their logo? Usually everyone does that. There's not a problem. Is the one sheet is designed in a way that we can understand? There's not too much information. It's not too many words. There's graphs. I mean, do you have the tam-sam sum? That should be obvious to you that you have this. Does it have the penetration rate? And then are you able to discuss the penetration rate when you make your presentation? And I think if you do this, it'll be perfect, right? There will be 2 groups that will be close to perfection. One group that their idea and opportunity, they're mixing both. We're not too sure and all this. And there will be one group, some is missing. And it's okay because it's only 10%. So you're learning from the process. But there's no reason. I have the break even, I have all of this. So Morgan, I'm sorry, I saw your hand was up. Do you still have your question?
The rubric answered it. I found it.
Okay. So, all right. So what we do now is we move to a very different subject. I want to go into the next section. Oh yes, Ashay, you have your hand up.
Yes, about the tam-sam. Is it in the last lecture?
Well, yes, I did talk about it in the last lecture, but I can talk about it again.
Okay, would you please?
Yes, I'll do that. Let me see the chat very quick because I didn't look. Oh yes, so someone was asking about my paper. I mean, if you just Google my name and you put prestige seeking, you will see the paper and it's free access. And actually, let me tell you another thing about this because it's a true story. Hopefully, you won't think I'm bragging. When I did this paper, I did it in 98, I think, 1998. And so when I did this one in 98, the journal, the Academy of Marketing Science Review said that they wanted to be the first one to be able to publish it online. Before 98, all the papers, to read the papers, you had to go to the library before. And so you would go to the library, you would go in the section, you would find the magazine, you pull the magazine, you would go inside, and then you grab this magazine and sometimes go to the photocopy machine and make some photocopy. That way you can have time to read it back in the library or whatever. That was the good old ways. Sometimes it was worse because you had to go to the library and you had to take it looked like a negative. And you had to make a negative go through like a microscope and you are looking for the articles. And then you will make photocopy out of the microscopes, and it was very hard to read. It was not fun. So the Academy of Marketing Science is the second largest marketing organization in the world, because the biggest one is the American Marketing Association, but the second one is the Academy of Marketing Science. Anyway, and they wanted to be better than the AMA. And so they said, we will publish online the articles. And they sent me an email and they said, hey, I guess it's a good news. Your article will be published online for everyone to see it. And in 98, there was a lot of people already using the internet. It was not like today, but I mean, I had email. I couldn't email everyone. There was still maybe 40% of the people that didn't have an email. Anyway. And so I said, you know what, I'd love to be online and it's going to be free access and all that. They were really trying to create the new paradigm of academia and information over the internet. So I said, let's do it. So my paper was published on the internet, and this is a true story. The first 2 months, it was seen more than 500,000 times. You may not know this, but Um, if you published a month before in the magazine, it was in the library, in 2 months, you were lucky if you had one person that saw the article. So I'm just going to be generous. I'm going to say 2 months, you had 10 people looking at the article. But because I was in the front of being online, 500,000 I got. I don't know if you see the difference between 10 and 500,000. It's huge. So I was this young professor, 98. I was in my 20s, and nobody knew me. I was speaking about a subject that not too many people talked about, luxury brands. And I was publishing in one of the top 10 journals. And suddenly I was read more than those people that were the gray hair that had done it. They click their heels and move like they own the world. And everybody knew my name and so forth. It was just crazy. Anyway, because of the opportunity, here again, opportunities are like this. And it's not like they were just in 98. Opportunity are in front of everyone. And the idea is you need to be like a sponge, like a magnet, like a scan, and constantly try to take advantage of those stepstones that look like. I tell you what, because when you publish a paper for a journal, it's a pain in the neck. If you ask the professors that have done it, it's a lot of work. If the publisher comes back to you and said, I want more work from you because I had to turn the paper into a HTML. Back in the days, that's how you call them, HTML. So it had to be coded and all this because the journal didn't know to do it. So they asked the authors to do it if they wanted to be online and published. So I said, of course. Do you know how to do it? Yes, I didn't know how to do it, but I'm a yes man. I make it work. So I did all the code. So when I gave it to them, they went like, "Oh wow, this is really cool." And in fact, you did something brilliant because when you go, I think it's still like this if you go online, but now there's many journals that do that. Is if you see the reference, you can click on the reference, it takes you to the reference inside the text. And so they are like, "Wow, that's brilliant." So not only I did what they wanted, I made it HTML, but I coded it and all this. And that's why I got the 500,000. The end of the story. 6 months after this, I was hired by a company called LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. For you guys in the music industry, it's like if you are hired by Universal, you know. But not only that, but I became their strategic manager. Because of this, my name was everywhere. I had to be someone. The reality is I was nobody. I was just a guy trying and making myself bigger, looking bigger than I was. And it served me well, and it was really cool. It was so great to be in Paris and working for that organization and so forth. It was wonderful. But anyhow, that's the point. So what I'm trying to teach you is not something you use just for the entrepreneurship. It's not something you use just to pass the exam. It's not something you use just in the music industry. It's something you can use for your own entrepreneurship of your own person in order to use this. It's a philosophy, right? Of running yourself and running everything around you, I think. And I'm hoping I've inspired you from this perspective. But now and I'm talking about my experience. I'm not trying to impress anyone, or this is really just to share. Maybe I should say my neighbor or my brother or something like that, just so it makes it more anonymous. But that's what it is. Anyway, market quantification. So Ashley was asking about this. So this example we're going to use is for this virtual business called ELS, Entertainment Life Specialist, which is an organization that creates psychological support for artists, musicians. The unfortunate opportunity is that many musicians are suffering psychological imbalance, anxiety, depression. It is very common. And if they are not suffering this, eventually they will. It's almost like 100%. If it's not now, it's sooner or later. So the students made a big justification argument for the fact that these are large numbers, they are very common, and they become a very big problem within the big major labels. And they they showed the amount of money lost due to that problem. It was a significant amount of money for Sony, Universal, and so forth. It was a big problem. So how to solve this is to create a company that specializes in artists and serve all of these artists, and in fact grow the company with the end goal to sell the business to one of the major, so they can have their own clinic that they can use for themselves, but also they can also let their competitors use the clinic and so forth. I don't know if you know a company called InOcean. InOcean is one of the biggest advertising agency in the United States of America, and it was bought by a company which is huge, the biggest one in Korea, called Hyundai. Hyundai bought InOcean. Why? Because that way they own an agency and they can use it for their own services, which they use and they spend anyway. And they also use it for all the other products they sell. They don't just sell cars; they also sell different brands of cars, but also, from Genesis to Kia and so forth. But they also sell other type of products, electronic products, and they have other Samsung, big Korean company and so forth that can use them because they like to work with the same culture and blah blah blah. Plus everybody else. So they were thinking this format, and the students were exposing this. All of these arguments can be easily supported. But then we say, what's the size of the market? So the TAM is the total available market. And the total available market is all the musicians in the United States. Eventually, since everyone is or will be eventually to some extent a little bit anxious, that's the number of musicians. Then it's the number of musicians that actually have anxiety problems and go to clinic, the SAM. And the sum is the one that are in Los Angeles. So do you see this format to narrow down, because their clinic was going to be in Los Angeles. So they're not going to help people in New York. They're going to help people in Los Angeles, but they have to show us how do they measure and forecast the number of potential customers. So the number of potential customers is 872. But they're not going to sell to 872 the first month, the first week, the first year. Then they have to say, out of this potential market in Los Angeles, year one, how many percentage do we think we can reach? So then they said, if we do 1%, the number is too small. If we do 10%, the number is pretty big. But with the 10%, we think we need to spend $500,000 of marketing. So then they talk about the $500,000 marketing. That sort of supports the fact that you could do 12%. They show what kind of marketing they're going to do in order to give the story that one supports the other. So it's the story of what you will do that need to support what you think, what you anticipate, what you estimate the percentage of this total sum that is potentially reachable. And then you take this number of customers, and then you multiply it by the costs associated to get the services, and then you get the total revenue for year one. And then you have this total revenue, then you can calculate your expenses, your profit, and then you can ask how much money you need from the investor and how much when they will get their money back based on the amount of money that they gave you and the percentage. So then remember this, the percentage that you give to the investor can be in different ways. One, you can give no equity to the investor, where you give them a percentage of return. So you say you get 20% return of your investment. Or they get no percentage of their return, but they get equity. They get 20% equity. They own 20% of the business, but no return. So eventually they need to get equity, some return, because it's the dividends of being a co-owner by 20%. They should be getting 20%. But what you could do is say, for the first 3 years, you don't get the 20%. It's your equity investment in the business. For the first 3 years, you don't get any return on investment, but you get after third year, the fourth year, whatever, you will get 20%, or you will get 10%, then 15%, then 20%. You can make variation on all of these, but you have to think about the different ways you give back. So sometimes what you do, because the reality, so now I tell you what I think is the reality is you want to give them the minimum equity and the minimum return on investment. But If you do this, you get no investors. So what you do is you give the maximum return on investment and the minimum equity. So you protect your equity. Because if the equity you give is a return on investment that you will have to give forever until you separate from this person. So if you have to bargain in the return on investment more than you give of the equity. Protect your equity. Can you get away with zero equity? You can. But remember, when you make a presentation at the end, I'll be listening if you say, Professor Vigneron will give you no equity and a 25% return. It's like, what? Okay. Let me show me how much how long do I get those 25%? When do I get my money? Right? If there's no equity, and I don't get a lot fast, therefore it's like, that's not a good investment because I'm taking all the risks of just making money from a return. But most people know that businesses, when they start, they don't make much money. So when you promise 25% return on investment, usually what happens is you give 5% because you say, we didn't know there's a war in Iran, nobody knew, and that was a bad year. Sorry, we were really unlucky. We started a bad year. We can only give you 5%. But if you have 25% of equity, you've got something. But if there's nothing, it's not good. So you have to put yourself in the shoes also of the investors. Investors, most of the time, have more choices, than there are people that are looking for money. So the person with the bargaining power is usually the one giving the money, has more bargaining power, usually, than the one that's looking for someone to give them money. There's some businesses where there's some people there, they came up with the most amazing business. Everybody knows they're going to be making money quick. Maybe they have a patent, some intellectual property that suddenly makes the market into a position that you can't, it's going to be gold. But most of the time, you are the one begging. Does it help, Ashenon? Does this cover?
Yes, Professor, it makes
Okay,
a
fantastic.
lot of sense.
Okay, wonderful. Now, any other question on this part?
No,
I'm saying the time, Sam, or anything else? No?
no.
Okay, thank you. So I'll jump into a part which is slightly different because we're going to focus this time on more administrative, organizational issues. This part two, we're going to look at the legal foundation. So first is this concept of the ethical culture. So ethical culture is the idea that, so this I have to explain it from the perspective of, I'm not a lawyer, but it's very risky to go into entrepreneurship without having an understanding of legal aspects. So legal aspects is not like if it happens, is it when it happens. It will happen. Legal problems will happen, and you just need to be prepared. So you want to think about building a ethical culture because you don't want to do things that are wrong. You don't want to do things going to cost money to fix. You want to treat people equally. So you want to do it from an HR perspective, from a collaboration perspective, from a intermediary partnership perspective, from investors, stakeholders, everyone. You have to think about, was I fair? Did I do the right things? It's part of leadership. When you're an entrepreneur, you're the leader, so you will be creating this world, and you have to make sure that that kingdom that you're creating is reasonable, and you take people's interest and emotion at stakes. The idea is that if you do, I believe this strongly, if you do something wrong, eventually it will come and bite you. If it's not right now, it's down the road. So it's much better to, even if you do always things right, sometimes you look like you did wrong, and you look guilty when you're not. So I think you're doing things that you're definitely guilty, that's going to make your life even more miserable. I think it's kind of the same concept as I think remembering lies is too much work. So therefore, you may as well say the truth. That way, it's easier to remember the truth than to remember the lies. And so it's this ethical thing that, at least for me, is I have a very good memory for the truth, but terrible for the lies. So therefore, if I lie, I'll be not able to remember what lie I said to each person. So therefore, I'll be picked up anyway. So ethical is important. Because of this, you need to choose I'd say two attorneys. So you don't want to say, I'm going to do everything without any attorneys. You have to think about the attorneys as the people that will help you. So because of AI, you have much more help using AI in order to create contracts, at least draft, understand certain situation and what could be the options that you should take in order to protect yourself. With AI, it's much easier than books. I was doing all of this at the time of books. It's very difficult. Then at the time of the search engine, it became better. But the time of AI now, it almost becomes beautiful. Uh, a confidentiality agreement, for example. Should you have one? Yes. A non-disclosure agreement. That's another one you should have. So all of these agreements, you can do it with AI. Eventually, it depends what you do it for and with who you're doing it, because sometimes the person you're doing it with is a lawyer or someone who has a lawyer, and therefore it's not fair. If they have AI on a lawyer and you just have AI, you think you may be protected, but you won't. So that's why you need to have a lawyer. Personally, I think of lawyers as being different level of lawyers, like the BB gun lawyer and the bazooka lawyer. And I think that's another thing that you don't want to not know. What is your network? Oh, my network is the best. How many lawyers do you know? I know no lawyers. Your network is not good. No lawyers. Know the BB gun and know the bazooka. Why? Because the BB gun is like $400 per hour. And the bazooka is closer, it's $1,000. And so depending on what you want, you don't want to use the $1,000 because that's not necessary. It's just something you're doing just in case. Use the BB gun. Something that happens and you're like under threat and you're going to lose if you don't use the proper lawyer, then you know the right lawyer. So knowing the right lawyer, having worked with lawyer, having a relationship with lawyers is very, very important. And when you say lawyer, there's different lawyers. There's contract lawyers, there's copyright lawyers, um, there is tax lawyers. I mean, the big mistake is to think that one lawyer can do it all as well. It's very different specialty, and the one that says that does it all has to be a BB gun, at least in one of the functions. They could not be the bazooka in all the functions. So sometimes they are bazookas because they belong to big firms. So it's true. If you go to a huge firm that has 50 lawyers, and you may be speaking to someone who happens to be the bazooka in one field and a BB gun in another one, but they will hook you up with a bazooka from the firm. The problem is those law firms are even more expensive because they give you the convenience of having everything under one roof. And also what happens is they bill you a lot. Maybe all I'm saying right now is boring you to death because you've never had experience with this. And in fact, good for you if all of this doesn't make any sense. Because if you have worked with lawyers and you see that they bill you 20 minutes here, 15 minutes there, 30 minutes here, 1 hour here, 2 hours here, 20 minutes here, and then ends up being 8 hours multiplied by $1,000, $8,000, and essentially they haven't done that much. And it's $8,000. If that has happened to you more than 10 times, everything I said makes total sense. But otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. But I just want to say it. In 10 years, you can go back to this video and then you'll say, oh my God, I didn't understand when he was saying this. Now I know exactly. But that's my suggestion when it comes to lawyer. Suggestion with drafting a founder agreement. When people do a startup, if they buy themselves, they never draft one. Is that a big problem? It's not a big problem, but it's better to draft a founder agreement, even if it's one page. Why? Because it's very likely that if your business is good, someone is going to want to join. So you need to have it so that way you can start from somewhere. The problem with those legal agreements is everyone delays and postpones. When the business is discussed around the kitchen table, at the restaurants, everybody's friends, and you find a very good vibe and everybody's very positive and optimistic. But when you actually do it and 1 year went under water under the bridge, then you wish you had done the agreement much sooner because there's a lot of disagreements. So you do the agreement in order to reduce the disagreement. So in this agreement, you talk about what is the nature of the business, what are the titles of the founders, what is the form you're going to have, how many percentage, who brings what, and if things go bad, how do you close the business and who gets what and how everybody gets a share that is fair. You decide this before, because if you do it after, then this goes to a lawyer, and that's going to be very expensive because the lawyers, what do? They make sure that this doesn't get done fast. That's one thing with the lawyers, is they don't mind doing it again and again and again and again. They're not really in search of closure. Lawyers don't look for closure, they just look for iteration. It keeps on going, and there's another problem and so forth. They're not like the surgeon that stops the blood as quickly as possible. Is they just let the blood go, and they charge you for it. So avoiding legal disputes. So what you do is so you don't leave it to, in our discussions we agreed, is, so that's the thing I tell all the students all the time, is that you gonna meet on Friday, you send this person a little agenda of what you're gonna discuss, then you meet, then you take notes. After the meeting, you do a summary of the meeting of the mind. This is what we discussed in this agenda of today. This was added in the agenda. In summary, this is the summary. I send it to you. If there's anything I said in a way that is misinterpreted, please ask me to correct. So I know it's very tedious to do this, but you do it to a minimum. So it could be 4 bullet points, it could be something. If you don't do it, there's 100% chance you're going to regret it. If you do it, there will still be some screw-ups, but maybe less screw-ups. So then the other thing to be careful is that you may need some permits. So most businesses in your city, you need a business license. You need some permits if you're doing some events, if you're selling things as a vendor, the merch, whatever you're doing, you're going to have permits. Then you choose the type of organization that you have. So there's 4 main format of organization. There's a sole proprietorship, which is the lightest one model, the model that you, if essentially all you have to do is file for a fictitious business name. And so this is something that is done very simple, is there's newspapers wherever you live that you're going to send $50 for them to publish the fact that you're starting a business called X, XOXOXO, and that business is going to be doing something and it's published. And if anyone has anything to say against that, they need to quickly reveal themselves. That's published, it's legal. And then you take this, you go to the county and you register this as a doing business as, and then you're a sole proprietor and you can run your business. The advantage of this is it's very cheap, it's very fast. As long as the name is not registered, you're good to go. The problem with this is there's no protection of your assets. There's no protection of liability. It's not the best one in terms of tax and deductions and so forth. Then you have the partnership. So the partnership is complicated because it's more for firms, like a law firm, like a dentist. It's a LLP type of thing. So the partnership is some other type of burdens, is more complicated than the sole proprietorship, and it's not something that is for everyone. It's really for your dentist and a lab or something. Okay. Then you have the corporation and the LLC, limited liability company. So the corporation, you have the C corp and the S corp. The C corp are usually the big one that are the largest organization. They are separating the owners from the corporation, and therefore there's a full tax and liability protection. The advantage too is you can sell the shares to the public. The S corp, it's a lighter version of the C corp, and it's a version that is sort of in between the LLC and the C corp. And then you have the LLC, which has been very trendy for the past 20 years, I would say, fastest growing because it's lighter in terms of administrative duties. So there's less duty, less reporting in the LLC. So a lot of sole proprietor usually jump onto the LLC. The problem with the LLC is you cannot offer it to the public. You have limitation in number of partners you can have, even though the numbers are very high. And the the pass it's a pass through, so it's a little different than the corporation, which is also a pass through, but a different type of pass through for the tax deduction. So there's some slight differences. It's if you really have a large organization, most likely you will want to get a S or C corp. If your organization is a startup that is really fast growing, but you don't want to have too much problems, there's fewer owners, the LLC is sufficient. So learning all of this is not complicated. You can do it now with AI, very simple, by explaining what you want, and then it tells you which one of the format will be the one that works best for you. Okay, so I've summarized this. Okay, now this one, I won't spend too much time because it's something that you are very familiar with. I guess you had one class just on that, looking at the intellectual property when it comes to the music. So you have the copyright, which is the creative part of the intellectual property. Then you have the patent, where you have two types of patent, utility and design. The utility protects the function versus the design protects the appearances. The most complicated one is to get the utility function from the patent. The design is easier. The problem with the design is it doesn't protect you as much. Even though it's a patent, it doesn't protect you as much as the utility. So the utility, there's many more expenses in order to demonstrate, more time that it takes to demonstrate the utility and to get the registration. A utility patent, I would say at minimum will be $25,000 versus a design patent will be more like $8,000. So design patent, $8,000, utility patent, $25,000. And so the problem with the utility is not so much the $25,000, is it could be easily 2, 3, 4 years. It's like 4 years is a long time. You want to, you're all jazzed up right now. You're not jazzed up right now and have to wait 4 years to be safe. So what can you do? Well, you can try to get a design patent because in both cases, when you register the patent, at least you have some level of protection from the patent pending registration. So the patent pending is more or less $2,000, but it's only worth for a year. And so what it says is that you've filed for the registration. So if someone copies you and you don't have the patent, at least you go in the direction of the patent, and then you can show that you were patent pending while they were copying you. So it gives you protection and it makes them stop or pay you licensing fees and royalties down the road. So what do most people do? They do patent pending. Do they do more than that? No. Why? Well, because it's very cheap. It's much quicker. In fact, patent pending, if you have a lawyer doing it, probably because they have a registration docket and all kinds of things, will take. Last one I did took us 3 months to get patent pending. Well, to get the number, it took us 3 weeks. But to get the documents that all the completion, 3 months. So at least that's pretty quick. Yeah. Then the trademark. So the trademark, you can have a brand that you just put TM, means that you're claiming the trademark, but it's not registered. So you put TM while you get it registered. Because of the government being impacted, first there was the COVID. Since COVID, it's been a mess for the trademark. So what used to take 10 months now takes 20 months. So it's much slower to get trademarks. The trademarks are obtained for certain product category, which means that you could have John for baby shampoo. But if you have John for baby shampoo, you don't have it for jewelry, or you don't have it for leather bags. or you don't have it for music instruments. So all in all, there is like 100 different product category, which are internationally recognized by the what's called the Madrid Protocol. And when you register a brand, you have to register it in that category. And so you have two ways of registering it. You register it in view of using it, and you won't be using it until it's registered. So it's pending. So it's a registration pending registration. Or you have the one that you said that you're using it and you're asking for permission to get it registered to you while you're using it. So you have to give a date since when you've used it. And it's a little bit more expensive to do it this way. And then when you get it and you've used it, then it's all good. But when you get it and you haven't used it, then you have to apply, show and demonstrate that you actually used it. So they give you like a year after the fact that they grant you the right to use the trademark. So you have a year to show that you're using it. In fact, they say you have 6 months, but it can be renewed another 6 months. So you really have 6 months, and then very small, it says, if you need 6 months, just let us know ahead of time and we'll give you extra 6 months. So the trademark, it's easily 12 months right now to get a trademark. So the problem so what's the problem for startups? Well, the problem is you don't have all of this leisure of the time. Usually when you're running a business, you're not postponing. So what I've done almost 100% of the time is I just add a brand which was registered, and then I had a brand B, which I used. So I had brand A, which the one I really wanted to use. And I put that one through the registration and started using it. And then I had brand B that was registered in case they denied me to jump to brand B. So, wow, Professor, that's cool. How do you do that? So what I do is I have, I don't know, 20 trademarks right now registered. And so because I have constantly a business, a new business, and a buy and sell business, so I've got this bucket of trademark. And so therefore I pick them very carefully that they could work in multiple industries. And so therefore, when I go into a new industry, oftentimes I have in my bucket of trademark a trademark that is perfect, that is even better than the one that that company has been using most of the time. So when you pick the trademark, what do you do with all the hashtags and all the .com and all this? Well, I also get those right away. Maybe I should not tell you all of this, actually. I'm giving you too much information tonight. But
No, no such thing. No such thing. Keep going.
I know, I'm giving you, yeah, because all of this are like, anyway. Is it legal, Professor, to do that? Sort of. And so, but Professor, I'm confused. Why did you do that? Why? Because when opportunity knocks, it knocks today, tomorrow, but I don't know in 1 year. And therefore, you cannot. That's a problem with business. You can't rush. But it's not like administration. You can just wait 1 year. Oh, well, we'll postpone, we'll all be younger in 1 year. No. In 1 year, we'll all be older and so forth. And whatever it was now may not be. And also you get, anyway, so you may be too young to understand that concept. But you've got to do it when it's hot. Get hot when it gets hot. So, because many times I've had situation where I had an investor that was ready to invest right now. And in 10 months, this person would not be there anymore. So you got to catch it just at that time. So that's one of the things I do is I anticipate. So it's a little investment on the side. Does it cost a lot of money to have that? Well, yes, it does. 25 trademarks with all the website and all this and that. It's going to be something like, like, 4,000 or 5,000 a year of just expenses to maintain all of that. Just, are you doing it yourself? You must be. for $5,000. Yes, doing it myself. If I have a lawyer doing it, you can multiply this by 4 or 5. So obviously, that's why you have to learn to do this. But I'm an entrepreneur, so an entrepreneur is a French word. That's why it's hard to spell, because there's this too many P's, too many R, too many UR and all this. And it means doing something. So if you are the person that decide to do something, you've got to do it and protect yourself. So why must new venture needs financing or some sort of source of money? Why? Well, because the problem is there is more money, it always costs much more. And also you have to do something for today, tomorrow, and after tomorrow. So you have to have 3 times the amount of money because of the contingencies that you need to have. Because they are growth, and you usually have to spend the money before you're growing. And so that's part of the problem. So where can you get the money? Well, from your own savings, from equity capital, from debts, or for creative sources. So we're going to look at each one of them. So here, I won't subject you to Dan Pena again, but just to remind you of what Dan Pena would have to say. It's like money is not the biggest problem. If you have a good business, you will find the money. And so the first thing is you use your own money. And I think that's very important, trying to use your own money, but and it's important also for investors. When you tell our investors that you have a business and that you invested some money, if you have a business and you invested too much money, usually that's a sign that you don't want to invest in this. It's like you go to this person, and I remember this. We had this person. He came as a client. He was a celebrity, and he was a sports celebrity. He came to us, to the class, and like we're doing with the artists in the previous class. But he came up with an app, and it was an app to put your coupons. To scan your coupons and keep your coupons, because the opportunity is that, I forgot the percentage, but it was huge, like 30% of people who get coupons and discounts and all that, or gift cards and all of these different things, saving money, they lose the gift card, they lose the code, they lose whatever. So he created this app where you could just scan all of this and he would keep it in different vaults. And he spent, at the time, this was 15 years ago, it was expensive to develop an app. So plus he had spent a lot of advertising money to try to grow it. And I think it was close to $400,000 that he had spent, and he had not made a dollar. So 400,000 loss and no money. That was a sign that was not very good, because it was a sign that he was a big spender. And so you don't want to invest in a company where the co-owner is a big spender, just spends, and then not very responsible. It happens. So personal funds, you see this business, am I going to invest? How much have you invested? Oh, we spent $40,000, and with $40,000, we got the equivalent of $80,000, as if we had spent $80,000. Oh, I like this person because they're careful with their money. Then you can ask friends and family, but that brings a very complicated situation. Maybe it's a little better if they come and work in the business, because then they give money, but they give work equity, sweat equity as well. But then the other method is bootstrapping, where you share as much as possible. You use all kinds of ways. So you don't buy, you rent with other people. You don't pay in advance. You have installments. You try to rent it from someone else. You try to store for someone else, but while you store it, you are able to use it. You use cheaper suppliers, so you go straight to wholesalers, instead of going through retailers. You go overseas and buy it from overseas office. You use employees, which are much more affordable, like interns and all that. But there's all kinds of pros and cons from doing this. So first, you need to decide how much money you need, and you need to decide how much equity you're willing to give away. So then you have and I already discussed this like that was 25 minutes ago, is you have to think about the funding. Is it going to be an equity funding or a debt funding? Equity funding is the one that I least recommend because eventually you are sort of married to the people that have equity. And it's very hard to be married, but it's even harder to be married to a stranger, hard to be married to your best friend, hard to be even harder to be married to a stranger. And usually things don't get better when you put money as that becomes the baby is money. It just gets worse. So therefore, you have to be very careful of that relationship you're developing. So debt is better. So then debt, who do you own is what makes a difference. Um, I'll discuss who you get the debt from and what kind of equity organization you can get from, and I'll finish with this. But before I want to talk about the talking to investors. So usually you have to think in terms of two formats. Well, maybe there's a third, but let's say two formats. There's a pitch. So that's the elevator pitch, the very short way you present yourself. So you won't do a pitch for this class. The one sheet is sort of a short pitch. It's short, sort of your elevator pitch versus the last presentation is more like your 5 minutes pitch, which is going to be more like 20 minutes. But what it is that there's a very short version and a very long version, and you have to be able to navigate between the two. What is the purpose of the elevator pitch or having an elevator pitch? Why would you have an elevator pitch? Anyone knows?
You might be in the elevator at the NAM show and you're talking to a potential client.
Exactly. The purpose of the elevator pitch is to generate the 5-minute pitch or many 5-minute pitch. So when you go to the NAM show, how many 5-minute pitch you have? Maybe zero. But how many 60-second pitch you have? As many as possible. When I think I told you this in the previous class, but when I launched my cognac business, a cognac business is very expensive because you have to store 20 years, if not more, of cognac. So you can easily have $1 million sitting for 20 years. So you have to come up with this $1 million, but that's the minimum. That's like just to get the ball rolling. And then you have to have the infrastructure to hold this for 20 years. But then you have to have the barrels. So the barrels get changed every 5 years. But if the more cognac you have, the more barrels. So then you can end up having $200,000 of barrels that you have to constantly rotate. So you have to have a lot of money. And you have to buy the bottles and the labels and the cork and the structures and the bottling. And it's a very expensive operation. Then you have to buy the spirits, the distillation and all that. So I was like, man, that's good. That's got to be the hardest thing. Maybe creating, I don't know, satellite is more complicated, but I'm not even sure. So I said, perfect, that's good for me. If it's complicated, I'm going to work in that chaos. Still, I don't know why I did it. It was too much chaos, but anyhow. So I tried to sell my cognac, couldn't sell it. And one day I went to this NAM of the wine and spirits, and I set myself in front of the toilets, and I stuffed myself with credit cards, and I gave my credit cards and made as many pitch as I could. And that day I sold almost $500,000 of cognac to a Russian guy that came to the show. And so I was glad that I did that. If I stayed in my booth, I would have sold $0 by going to the toilet and doing at my booth in 4 days. I must have done 8 pitch. In the toilet, in an hour, I must have done 80 pitch. You know what I'm saying? So that what I'm trying to say is that the volume. So the 60 seconds is the volume. And that's very, very important. And you win by the numbers. And so that's what I wanted to say here. So should you have both? You should have both. But this, see, my daughter became an entrepreneur, and I told her that the first day she didn't understand. The second day, she started to understand. No, she has had this business for a year and a half. If I tell her that, she's going to say, isn't that obvious? Yeah, now that you've done it, it's obvious. But before, this is a foreign language. You have to learn. So what's inside your elevator pitch? Um, I have here. Describe the opportunity of the problem. So what problem you're trying to solve? 20 seconds. How is your product the solution to this problem? Why you and who is it for? Right? And then if you're asking for some money, then there is a ask and return. Okay. So you have to have all of these elements. And I'll give you an example here. This was crazy. This was for a business. That was in 2001, I think. I had been at Season for 2 years. And this business came and said, "Oh, I'm a bottling company, one of the biggest one in North Los Angeles." He was, and he said, "I've got this idea of putting something in the water to make it better, like vitamin or whatever." And so with the students, we did a research and we found that was a great idea. In fact, vitamin water came after, and that became a multi-billion-dollar company. And so they were already set up there. And then so how does it look? It's a number one that does number two, so we can number three. So it's a mineral water that does have nutritional enrichment calcium, so you can have stronger bones. That's it. You have to think about this. The more it is complicated to tell every person, the least they're going to pay attention. So, for example, me, when I went in front of the toilet, how did I do it? Professor, I want to hear. It's kind of cool. Tell us. So what did I do is say, "Hey, my name is Frank. I'm the owner of Commandant. We won #1 cognac rated as of 2010. And why? Is because we are only making small batch cognac instead of mass-produced formulas. Do you want to try it? Here's my name. Here's my address. Here's everything. It's right there. #1 cognac in the world." So I was lucky because I won #1 cognac in the world that year. That was kind of like the ace of spade for me, right? If you know a little bit of wine and spirits, so what's the #1? It's called 100 points. So wine and spirits are rated from 0 to 100, and there's very, very few that go above 95. Very few. I was 100. So how come you were 100 and they didn't rush to your booth? Because the big company do everything they can, wink, wink, to get 100. And once they get 100, they make sure everybody knows. But when you're a small company, the big company, wink, wink, make sure that nobody knows. And therefore, your voice doesn't get heard. And so that's the way it is. It's not fair. And it's part of the fun of life. Now, your 5 minutes, what does it have? It has a cover, it has a description of the team, it explains the opportunity by looking at the time sum. It talks about the problem you're serving and the solution that you're providing. It explains who are your competitors and show why you're better than the competitors, hence the competitive table. It talks about your business model, how you're going to be making money with the different products, explain what are the different products for the different targets. Then it explains the key strategies, the amount of processes, the different distribution methods, the different places and promotions that you're going to have. Then he makes a financial projection through your break even, and then he asks the money, and then you close. So could this be the deck or sort of the look of the deck that you will have in your final presentation? Yes, it will be. This is sort of the look you should have at the very final. Now, who will get equity? So you have the venture capital, the business angels, and the initial public offering. So the business angels are individuals that are joining organization, which they will be a member of that organization, and they will go to events where there will be people doing Shark Tank type of presentations. Usually it's a 2 minute presentation, like the LA Angels are that way. And they go there on a specific date. There's a little meeting room, then there's the presentation, and then you go to the meeting room and see the people again, and you exchange contacts and so forth. The beauty of this is it's very informal, and you can talk to all kinds of different people. You could come with the music, entrepreneurship, and there may be someone interested. People will be interested in all kinds of different subjects, not just AI, and AI. They will be interested in different type of subjects. But AI is the one they're the most interested right now. The Business angels won't give you large sums of money. They won't ask also a large amount of equity, and usually they tend to be not too greedy. So the one in LA are the Pasadena, the Maverick, and the Tech Coast angels. That's the three that are the most famous. The venture capital, they are organized under a firm. So you have to be a member of the firm. And in fact, you don't give your own money. What you do is you give your own money to the firm, and then it's the firm that invests it inside the equity. So instead of John Smith going to the as a angel investor and then as a person deciding to invest in that business, it becomes John that sort of puts money into the venture capital, and then that venture capital, John will sort of lobby for that venture capital to put the money into that startup. The problem with those venture capital is they tend to be very focused on pharmaceutical products, AI, engineering, and so forth. So for the music industry, there's like one or two in the United States. There's not many venture capital for the music industry. It's much more limited. Then another thing I wanted just to add before we finish, which is kind of, some people understand it in 5 seconds and some others it's more complicated. Is when you have an entrepreneurship, sometimes the value is not in the revenue that you have, but in the potential growth that the company has. So sometimes you spend 5 years or more running this business, which you haven't made that much money, but the business is worth a lot to someone else. So sometimes the return on investment for an entrepreneur is from the day they sell the business, not so much from the period that they've owned the business. So that's another thing that you need to be aware of. But at the same time, you don't want to lie to yourself by saying, oh, this business is worth $10 million. The day I sell it, I'll have $10 million in my bank. That may be hopes and dreams. It may not be true, and you may have been working for 10 years and not made any money. But when you think about valuation, that's what's very important. So for example, when you're going to come, you're going to say, oh, I'll give you 10% for $100,000, which means that your business is worth $1 million. But how could your business be worth $1 million when your revenue is going to be 250,000 a year? So that's a very, very common mistake that you sometimes hear in Shark Tank. You don't hear it often in Shark Tank. Why? Because the businesses that we see in Shark Tank on TV are not random businesses that have performed. What they do is they have 1,000 Shark Tank presentation in Las Vegas on like 3 days. Out of these, they pick 100, and then those 100 they get selected again. So there's only 30 that are going to go on TV. So the ones that go on TV are already cleaned up. They are the best one, and those best one rarely make the mistake of saying my business is worth $500,000. Give me 10% for $100,000. The maths are wrong. So you have to be careful not to overvalue your business as well in order to give less equity. Investors are not stupid. Is if you increase the value of your business and you can give a percentage, the number is going to be very big of money, but very small of percentage. And that's what you're trying to do, is to get the most money for the smallest equity. But if your valuation is wrong, that's another sign that this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Now, when you go into the type of debt, is you have two main provider of debt from a loan. You have the commercial banks, like Wells Fargo is one of the biggest in America that gives loans to small businesses, but you also have the government. So the government, what they do is they don't give you the money. They have an organization called Small Business Association, and the Small Business Association is a nonprofit organization that is reviewing businesses for their startup value. So what you do is you do a pitch to the SBA. If the SBA think you're great, they give you a guarantee for a certain amount of loan. Then you take this guarantee and you go to the bank, and then the bank will give you the loan, and they will use the SBA as the insurance, as the guarantee for the payment of the loan. So it's not the SBA. The SBA is like the insurance. It's like your best friend saying, if they don't pay, I pay. So that's the beauty of that SBA guarantee loan. And that's another way of getting a debt. That way you don't have to give collaterals, because for a Wells Fargo bank, you would have to provide collaterals in order to get the loan for something significant. If it's $5,000, that may be fine. Your credit may be good enough, but if it's a large amount of money, you'll have to have collaterals. Okay. All right. So all of this summarizes the more legal, financial, administrative part of entrepreneurship. And before I spent a long time explaining really all the different elements, from strategy, from consumer behavior, from the research, from the just noticeable perspective, from the idea again of having to do the SWOT and working on your break even. That's a very important piece. But you don't start with a break even, is you always go back to the break even just to see if everything you're saying makes sense. Bye everyone. Have a
Okay.
great night.
Yeah,
Thank you,
okay.
Bye,
Professor.
Thank you,
everybody.
Professor.
Bye bye.